So forgive me. As you may or may not know, most of these little reviews I do, my what to pay things, have a script to them, and which I spend some time. Obviously, since I'm actually researching the game, I want to figure out what I'm talking about, know what I'm talking about in advance, have the right names, have the right information, all that fun stuff. But I don't need to do that for this game. This is unscripted, so forgive me if my thoughts tend to ramble a bit, or roam. My thoughts do tend to roam because my mind tends to think in 5 different directions at once. And there's not a lot I can do about that. That's just the way I am. So, a bit of a preamble, or prelude. My mind is actually very structured, as anyone who actually knows me will know. I'm very much about things being orderly, neat, controlled, contained. Everything has its place. I'm not quite to the level of OCD, but I'm certainly leaning in that direction, and I will not deny that. Well, I say that so that when I tell you these phrases I'm about to tell you, you know I mean it. Lots of people use the phrase best, or favorite, or among the best, or I love this. Anything of this nature, and they don't really mean it. Obviously it's something they like, whether it be a song, or a movie, or food. But it's just them exaggerating. Not with any ill intent, mind you. That's how people tend to talk. It's how people tend to be. They're not literal about it. And I know I'm the last person in the world to talk about not being literal, since I am a very non-literal person myself. But when I say the best game of all time, you know I mean it. For me, obviously. This is obviously just my opinion. I shouldn't even have to preface that. Final Fantasy VI is the best game of all time. Everything about that game was a thing of beauty. It was a masterpiece. The story was deep and involved and complex. Not too complex. Not too complicated. They didn't try and overdo it like, I hate to call this out, but, the Metal Gear Solid series, which went a little bit too far. I still like the story. The characters had depth to them. They had meaning. You really ended up caring about these people. Not even by the end of the game, by the halfway point of the game, by the third way point of the game. You wanted this to work out for these people. You felt it when they bled and when they cried. They have backstory, and they have character growth, and they have development, and no one is the same as they were at the end than they were at the beginning. Not counting, Umaro and probably Gogo. No, you know what? I'm going to take a sidestep on that. Even Mog. His was quiet and mild and obscured, unfortunately, in the American release. The original SNES release. But oh my god. And then there's the graphics. This is a SNES game, mind you. And yet the level of detail. I'm not even talking about, you'd be going along in a mountain, and there's this beautiful scenic vista in the background. And you could just gaze at that and be like, holy crap. Not even just that. Well, that was amazing by itself. The grass, the dirt, the cities, the towns, everything had such immense detail. They squeezed every ounce of complexity and accuracy that they could out of pixelated art. Because we're still dealing with pixels here. This is still the 16-bit era. I mean, obviously we're dealing with pixels in general, but you get what I mean. This is pixelated art. This was bit art. And it was art. It was beautiful. You could go through the city of Nicaea, and there's bushels of apples, and bread, and jugs of wine, or beer, or mud, or mead, or whatever the heck it is. Just sitting there. It has nothing to do with anything. You know what? I'm going to segue that into my next point. The level of attention to making FF6 feel like a world instead of just a game was beautiful. It wasn't the most I've ever seen. Not going to lie about that. But it was enough. It really made you feel like this was a place that wasn't just a linear corridor. When you go into a town, all you have to see is here's the NPC who advances the quest, here's the NPCs who sell things, right? the furthest extent of this would be FF13, which doesn't have towns. It just has a little thing which you use to save and buy stuff, right? FF6 is on the other side of that scale over here. You go into a town and there's a house. You can't go in it. It's just there. There's a window. There's siding on it. The roof's got there. There's a chimney. Sometimes there's smoke coming out of it. You know, there's another house. You can go into this one. You can go in. There's a couple places you can't see in there. There's a bunch of... There's like a little bar thing here, keeping back there. There's nothing back there. There's no items. This isn't a secret treasure hunt. This has nothing to do with the game. It's flavor. It's scope. I'm going to use that word. As one of my favorite reviewers, Sci-Fi Debris, uses that word in this context. It's scope. It gives you the essence that what you are doing is playing in a world, in a setting, in a living, breathing place, rather than just playing a game. And then there's the music. I'm sorry, I still, admittedly, and you can make fun of me if you will, because this is absolutely true, I still get a little misty-eyed when I hear some of those songs. The overworld theme, the theme that plays in Daryl's tomb when Setzer is recounting what happened with him and her, and just, oh god, that was Umatsu's high point of his career. I'm sorry, he struck the nail on the head so dead center and so beautifully. FF6 is what convinced me to start doing music. I was already leaning that way. I had spent some time analyzing songs. Yes, that's right, I used to spend some of my youth analyzing songs. You may make fun if you wish. And learning how music theory worked by paying attention to what they did with their music. You know, since Mega Man 2, actually, if you really want to go back to the original of it. Heat Man stage, if you care. That was the first song ever for me that I really liked and that I really listened to. But when FF6 hit, and I listened to that, and I bought that soundtrack for $60. $60 was a lot of money to me at the time. And it had to be imported from a company I don't think even exists anymore. And they only had like 4 soundtracks that I cared about. It was all anime music. And I played that so much. And I listened to that so much. And it moved me. It made me feel. And that's why I really started getting into music, was because of that. That's when I finally actually started making it happen, when I finally figured out the programs and got a keyboard. Actually, my mother bought me a keyboard, you know, one here I could hook up into the computer and figure out the notes and try and play a tune and make a tune, and so forth and so on. And